Suella Braverman says that her migration speech in New York is not part of a bid to be the leader of the Conservative Party. It's ridiculous to suggest that she's bidding to become the next Prime Minister. If she were to be the leader of the Conservative Party, that pretty well guarantees that the Conservatives will not be elected for a generation, if not more. She is the cause of the Conservative downfall, or a manifestation of the Conservative downfall. And, well, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I would not go anywhere near the Conservative Party with her in a position of power, with her as Home Secretary. I'm quite happy to keep my distance. So she says it's flippant to dismiss her speech as motivated by a desire to boost her standing in the Tory leadership contest, but without ruling out that she wants to be a candidate. So it's a Mandy Rice-Davies thing. I find it rather entertaining to think of her as Mandy Rice-Davies. With respect, it's a slightly flippant interpretation of what is a very serious issue. It's not a serious issue, not in her hands. There is one thing she's got right. I applaud her for that if she wants to change anything, she starts with the international agreement, which is the 1951 Refugee Convention. But her interpretation of that is that everybody should, in fact, ignore it. That is absurd. That is ridiculous. She says that it's unrealistic to expect countries she thinks it is realistic to expect countries to agree to revise the UN Convention. I think she's right. And she says she's inviting my international partners, oh, for God's sake, my international partners to engage in an exercise of review and reform. She's right. Unfortunately, I think it's legitimate to ask these questions whether the definition of refugee in the international conventions is still fit for purpose. That is perfectly reasonable. Whether the definition of persecution has been stretched beyond a reasonable limit, that is perfectly reasonable. And that's in face of these high numbers that we're now seeing. That is reasonable as well. Those 3 points are perfectly reasonable. What she then goes on to say is that she has compassion for migrants. That is not reasonable. She has no compassion. She has the compassion of a vegetable. And I would say is that we are facing unprecedented levels of illegal migration, not just in the UK, but also in countries like the US and other Western and European countries. That's perfectly true. But she doesn't answer whether or not she lacks compassion. She lacks compassion. It's right that we ask for greater collaboration at the international level amongst like-minded partners, and ultimately the UK cannot sustain such levels of illegal migration or indeed legal migration. It's indeed the prudent thing for political leaders to call this out and take steps to address it. Well, the prudent thing, first of all, for us to do is to process the applications. That's the prudent thing. And then to use the migrant labour and to encourage people who have come to the UK to pay taxes. That is the prudent thing. What we are actually doing is throwing money down the drain by paying £8 million a day for hotel accommodation to ridiculous hotels like the Mercury and whatever, all of these hotel chains that the Suella Braverman regime has done deals with. That is the absurd thing. As for HS2, we'll come to that later.